Welcome, everybody. This is the December 16th meeting of the Estes Park Planning Commission. Call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is a round of introductions. We'll start it by saying I'm Commissioner Cooper.
Commissioner Mulhern.
Commissioner Arterburn.
Commissioner Paulson.
And by the way, we are all volunteers. Go ahead.
Dan Kramer, Town Attorney.
Steve Correcchia, Community Development Director, and also here, Paul Hornbeck, Senior Planner, Kara Washam, Planner 2. They'll be presenting today.
Perfect, thank you. All right. Second on our agenda item is the approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve or change.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion, any additions, deletions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, the agenda has been approved. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is the Planning Commission minutes from November 18th. Again, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Turned it off.
Oh, I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion, any changes, any modifications? Okay, hearing none. Ready for a vote? Okay, the consent agenda is passed. Next on our agenda would be any public comment. Anybody have any public comment they would like to bring forward? Anything in addition to the agenda that we have? Okay, seeing none, then we will move right into the action items.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we address the issue of ballot question 300 before we start this whole meeting today.
Would you mind clarifying exactly what you're looking for?
Well, the ballot question 300 does not address the retroactivity, in other words, stuff that's been applied before. And the applications we're looking at were submitted on January 25th, but the voters approved this on November 4th, certified it on November 21st, and it was by a 54% margin. And I also have to say that it wasn't just, they've thought about it because the other one did not pass by 59%. So I'd like to just to kind of discuss this and maybe recommend a motion that we clarify this in some way before we continue to spend time and approve it without addressing this question.
I guess, Attorney Kramer, I'd like to get your opinion on whether or not we can retroactively or review a rezone for Stanley Circle Drive since the application came in prior to the vote, and get your opinion.
Chair Cooper, I think that's a conversation worth having as part of that agenda item. I want to make sure that that gets on the record for that agenda item, and you can see that it was addressed to some degree in the staff report. But just to say as way of prelude, that's something that town staff are looking to you all for a recommendation on, and that would go up to the town board along with the application. So the application is before you today, and we'll need a recommendation from you all on the application.
Okay, any other comments from the other commissioners?
Yes, I mean, if approved without applying ballot question 300, we could be accused of a protocol violation or a voter approval ordinance, voter approval ordinance. In other words, they approved it. The text of the question did not address it, and so it's still uncertain. And these are both zoning, and so to go through the whole thing based on without looking at that, I think we need to resolve that first. So I would like to maybe give the opportunity to the applicants to go out and do this, go out and talk to 2/3 of the people and get that and then submit it. And then that becomes no issue, whether it's retroactive from past or not. So I feel like, when 54% of the people talk, we need to listen to them. So I'd like to maybe postpone discussion on these two items until the applicant submits that 2/3 of the people have done that.
So Commissioner Mulhern, this is, I do think it would be worthwhile to open the item, to go into it, to have this conversation as part of that first item. And if you want to have it as part of the second item too, we could do that. And we've discussed this in the past, the ability of the Planning Commission to say, we're not going to act on this, we want to send it back to the applicant to do some more work and bring it back to us. And there's a delicate balance there, because while the code does say that you're able to continue an item for the purposes of getting more information, the way the code is structured really doesn't allow you to postpone hearing an item at all indefinitely. It's structured so as to give you the option of recommending approval, denial, or approval with conditions, so that it can go to the town board and they can make a final determination. And I appreciate wanting to reach resolution on it. What I'm getting at, and we can discuss this further in the item to the extent that you have questions on it, is that there's only so much resolution we're going to reach today, because you all are a recommending body on these applications. And the goal here is to make a recommendation, and then the town board will take that into consideration as they make the determination of whether the application meets all required criteria.
I know the staff has found that the application meets the development code standards, but gives us no recommendation due to the unresolved question regarding the ballot question 300. I believe it's appropriate for the commission to pause and allow the question to be addressed before making recommendations to the town board. I don't want to recommend something that I haven't gotten all the information on, and that's one thing. And I guess what I'm saying is that we're going to have to address this sooner or later. Why not, we have one condition that they have to meet, and that's just go out, reach out to the people that are within 500 feet of the boundary, get those signatures, and then this is no issue. Then we can look at it based on the development code standards. And this isn't unusual. I got from today's paper, it says council delays stadium rezoning, and it's basically the same thing. They want to have in that case, they want the voters to make a decision. We also saw that, I did a little research, and we also saw this in Telluride. Telluride had one, and they basically stopped everything. Basically we need to, I think, resolve this, and whether it's today, these applications or some other applications, we need to address this right now, because, it's obvious that everything submitted after November 21st will apply, but what about the stuff before? And, if we go ahead and make a decision and approve it and say, trustees, look at this with an approval, then there's going to be friction. And this is again, because it wasn't clarified, and some do have an escape clause. This doesn't have an escape clause in it. It's basically saying 2/3 of anyone that's within 500 feet of the boundaries. Let's go out and get it. Let's go out and do it. Maybe this isn't going to be an issue at all. Maybe we're going to be able to get this for every single one.
So Commissioner Mulhern, we are now discussing an application. I would be more comfortable if we opened that agenda item for discussion of that application. I think this is all fair point for conversation as part of that item, so that can all be on the record as part of what's been considered for the item. And then there will be a staff report. As always, the Planning Commission does have the option to continue an item, and when we get to that point, if there is a desire to continue the item, and I would say what I just said, which is consider that it's really not the Planning Commission's role to continue an item indefinitely until something happens. It's the Planning Commission's role to make a recommendation to the town board. But we can have that conversation in more detail when we get there.
So our recommendation would be disapprove until you get that information. So continuing this discussion about what we're doing, let's hear the application. It is discussed in the brief. And then if our recommendation is, you can make a motion to say to disapprove and waiting for that information. That's where, the way this process works.
Okay, I like that idea. I mean, I just, basically what I want to say is that I want to make sure that before we move forward with this, that this is addressed and we have got an issue, we've settled it. So we can just add it to the I accept or I reject.
So commissioners, now we're getting into a discussion of how we're going to vote on an item that has not even been opened. We need to
Let's,
open the item,
let's
hear the
open the
staff
item.
report.
Yeah, let's move forward. Let's move on. Okay, rezoning of 179 Stanley Circle, Planner Hornbeck, you're on the dais.
Thank you, Chair Cooper, Planning Commissioners. The subject property is currently zoned E Estate, contains a single residence built in 1938. The town of Estes Park purchased the property in 2001 and previously used the house as employee housing, although it is currently vacant. In September, the town board approved vacation of a portion of adjacent right-of-way on Stanley Circle Drive, which increased the subject property by approximately 11,000 square feet to bring it to its current 1 acre size. The site is located outside all mapped hazard areas. It is not within any mapped important wildlife habitat areas. The property abuts a 95-foot wide utility corridor to the south, owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. The future land use designation from the comprehensive plan is mixed residential neighborhood for the subject property. Adjacent properties are shown on the map before you as well. Current uses in the area include single-family residential in the neighborhood to the west, accommodations across the street to the east, as well as to the north, and townhome development to the southeast. The applicant, the Estes Park Housing Authority, representing the property owner, the town of Estes Park, requests the property be rezoned from E Estate to RM, multifamily residential, with the intent of constructing employee housing for town of Estes Park employees. The applicant has submitted a conceptual site plan to accompany this rezoning request. Zooming in slightly and point out that north is now to the left on the drawing before you. This concept plan depicts 12 units, surface parking, small storage structure, as well as 2 access points, one which aligns with Highland Lane and another approximately 200 feet to the south. Conceptual building elevations were also provided. Advantages of this application. The application does comply with the review criteria in the development code for rezonings, which include the 3 criteria. Number 1, the amendments necessary to address changes in conditions in the areas affected. Number 2, deals with compatibility and consistency with the comprehensive plan as well as existing development patterns. And number 3, regarding ability to serve the proposed development. And I'll get into each of those in a little more detail now. On change of conditions, staff has identified 3 primary items. First is the new comprehensive plan adopted in 2022. The future land use designation changed from estate to neighborhood village. So the envisioned development pattern was changed with this update or new comprehensive plan. Number 2, neighboring development, the Mountain Woods townhomes built in 2019 is a very similar density development pattern to what's proposed. Is located just on the opposite side of that utility corridor. And lastly, the housing needs in the community. The housing needs assessment documents the housing challenges in the community. And to that point, median sales prices of single-family homes have increased from approximately $190,000 to $692,000 over a 24-year period from 2000 to 2024. On compatibility and consistency with the comp plan, regarding natural environment, scenic character can be protected through development code standards such as open space requirements, landscaping requirements, and outdoor lighting standards. The conceptual plan does fit the context of the Stanley Avenue corridor, which includes townhomes, single-family homes, accommodation uses, and other businesses. The site is not located within a high fire hazard area or important wildlife area. On built environment, the future land use map is a tool to strategically direct growth towards areas of existing infrastructure. Rezoning the property in accordance with the map's designation of mixed residential is a way of implementing this goal. The site is well served by existing municipal level infrastructure, including water, sewer, and electric. The site allows for efficient delivery of public services such as road maintenance, public safety services that are already provided in the area. Regarding housing, the proposed rezoning would allow new housing opportunities by allowing development of the 12 proposed units that would be deed restricted for workforce housing. On compatibility and consistency with existing growth patterns, the Estes Park Development Code does provide a definition of compatible or compatibility. It speaks to items such as height, scale, mass of structures, landscaping, lighting, noise, architecture, and traffic. The height, scale, mass, and bulk of structures would be in character with the existing area by following the RM zone district standards. Similarly, landscaping, lighting, noise, and architecture are expected to be compatible and consistent with the area. Vehicular traffic would be in character with existing conditions. So with that staff finding, the proposed rezoning is compatible and consistent with the policies and intent of the comprehensive plan, as well as the existing growth and development patterns nearby and throughout the area. Ability to serve. No comments from service providers or utility providers expressed opposition to the rezoning or an inability to provide adequate services. A potential disadvantage is uncertainty whether ballot question 300 applies to this application. The ballot question, as discussed, was approved in November. The subject application was received prior to that vote in January of this year, and the ballot question does not state whether or not it applies to applications already received and under review. The applicant has not submitted written approval of the application from the neighboring property owners in accordance with that ballot language. The Housing Authority, in its role as the applicant, contends that the ballot question is not applicable as the application was submitted prior to the ballot question. Staff finds the application meets the standards for review in the development code. However, staff has no recommendation at this time as to whether the ballot question applies and therefore is unable to offer a recommendation. The Planning Commission may make a recommendation to the town board as it sees fit, including a recommendation on the application with or without an interpretation on applicability of the ballot question. Planning staff will forward that recommendation to town board, including the substance of the application, including criteria from the development code, as well as any recommendation the commission may have on applicability of the ballot question. Ultimately, the Board of Trustees will take the commission's recommendation into consideration when taking action on the application. Regarding financial resource impact, the rezoning would have no impact itself. Future development would require town services beyond what are currently provided. Costs incurred by the town for construction and operation of employee housing is outside the scope of this application. Public notice was provided in accordance with code requirements. Approximately 8 public comments have been received in opposition to this project. Some common themes in those comments were concerns about neighborhood character and the need for more firm development plans. Sample motions are provided for your reference, and I do want to note the applicant's present and has an presentation I believe they'd like to share with you as well.
Thank you. Let's move on with the applicant's presentation, and then we can discuss.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Lane. I'm with Basis Architecture, consultant on the project. We've had a firm here in Estes Park for 26 years. So I was actually around when this code was created and saw some of the sausage get made. It's pretty interesting. And here we are. Lots of fun along the way. I'm just going to give a real brief overview of the project, and we'll also have Pete Levine from the Housing Authority give you some more direct information from the owner. But I just want to talk a little bit about how we got to this particular layout. We did have a neighborhood meeting and proposed a couple of three different scenarios really, and arrived at this one in part based on some of the comments received. In particular, really, I guess wanted to point out that we developed this sort of courtyard scenario where the buildings face each other in this common area, and then sort of double up on, in terms of the impact from Stanley Ave or from Stanley Circle, the impact is somewhat reduced because we don't have a line of 12 buildings. In other words, we have really, on the Stanley Circle Drive portion, we have 4 units, right? 2 buildings, 2 duplexes, and a little bit heavier density on the east side where we have more of an exposure to the hotel and other commercial uses. So in trying to orient the site and lay it out, we were mindful of what the impacts were, understanding that we are working towards a goal that we have this whole comp plan process, and that's a big deal that was a lot of time invested, and this is kind of the foundational element of that site. The other element I'd point out is that we do have a lot of surface parking, and that was, again, a very conscious decision to make. We had a version that had a lot of garages in them, so the cars would be hidden. And actually got a lot of negative feedback associated with that because the anticipation was that people would just fill their garage with stuff and park, all over the place. And so in order to prevent that from happening, we went to a surface parking scenario that we could landscape with some storage structures within the car. A couple of these are covered with a carport, but the spaces are preserved and open so that they can really only be used for parking. So those are a couple of items that we have in the site plan. In terms of, we have a district buffer, as you said, on the south side, so there'll be a screening to the property there, and we've maintained a couple of the major trees. The only other thing I'll point out is that this is exactly what it says. It's a concept site plan. Were this application to proceed forward, this would all come back in a much more highly detailed package that would address drainage and utilities and all kinds of detail. So this is not approving this particular plan, carte blanche. It would be a lot more, there would be many other steps. You'd see it again in all its detail and glory. Again, these are just some preliminary designs to show that the roof lines are, it's just a 2-story building. The comp plan actually considers that property might be 3 stories. We stayed to 2 in more of a townhome sort of scenario, and just kept the roof lines fairly simple, but some gables and different earth tone colors and so on to keep in our kind of style of Estes Park. Obviously, it's a simple forms given the product style, but trying to make it fit in as best we can. So that's really all I had. I just wanted to give you a brief overview. And I've got Pete Levine with the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Steve, and it's nice to be in front of you. My name is Peter Levine. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development with the Housing Authority. The next half of the presentation is really going to be somewhat a repeat of what community development discussed, but really just wanted to hone in on the alignment with the comprehensive plan and the requirements for a rezone. So as we're looking at it, number one, with the amendment is necessary to address changes in conditions of the area affected. I know that this question has this requirement has posed a lot of questions depending upon how it's interpreted. So I tried to hit this both at a micro level, looking at the submarket, and then also at a macro level. So looking at this here at a micro level, we have a new development in the area, including a 3-story townhome building that is just to the south of this parcel. It's across a strip of land that is owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. We have a change of future land use to mixed residential for the subject parcel. Public Works plans to update the right-of-way at the Stanley Circle Drive intersection. And then there's been a number of upgrades at the hospital just to the south over recent years to serve a changing community. Looking at things from a macro level, Estes, and all of this data comes from the Estes Park Housing Brief, so this is not something that we created as the Housing Authority. The Estes Valley has lost almost a third of our children and 10% of working age adults, while retirees have almost doubled in number. Approximately a third of the workers now commute into Estes Park from outside the valley. The number of children in town under the age of 18 has reduced from 946 in 2010 to 641 to 2023 based on the most recent census data. Or data, not census data, because that's only done in the 10s, 20s, 30s. In 2025, the median single-family home for sale had 3 bedrooms and cost $767,000. A range from the low of 310 up to about 900. And then the medium attached home, so looking at townhome or condos, had 2 bedrooms and cost over $500,000. Both of these data points reflect a drastic increase in purchase price over the last 10 years. So there's dramatic and drastic changes in conditions that have taken place within the past decade. And so in order to preserve the community that exists within Estes Park, more cost-effective housing or higher wages are important, or higher wages for employees are required in order to strike that affordability balance. Number 2, looking at the development plan, the property is mixed residential in the future land use category. So our proposed development includes townhomes, which matches the intended land use. The development is intended to be 3 stories tall. It's well located near 2 major roads, US 7 and US 36. It is walking distance to downtown and to town hall, both less than about 1 mile, a little less. We're planning to install bike racks and encouraging various multimodal transportations, and we're also adding curb and gutter to property boundaries as is going to be required through this development process. So the proposed development is really an ideal example of transitional density from higher intensity use to the east and transitioning to low density use to the west. So to the east, and the next couple slides are going to have some images. But to the east, we have the Holiday Inn and the Estes Park Conference Center, which is A zoning. The southeast, we have a self-storage facility, which is commercial heavy zoning. And then to the south, there's the 2- and 3-story townhomes, which are RM, multifamily zoning. And then to the west and the southwest, there's the single-family homes with estate zoning. So this development will serve as transition in density from high-intensive uses like a conference center and storage facility to lower-intense uses like estate zoning. It also matches the zoning to the south and will be a similar product to that as well. So you can see here with the current zoning map on the left, the higher intensity uses of O, A, CH off to the right or the east, and then to the north and the south, you have the R2, the RM zoning, and then to the west, the E. Similar for the future land use map, that type of transitional development pattern is intended to continue with mixed-use centers and corridors off to the east, transitional zoning here in the center, and then suburban estate off to the west. So it's the applicant's feeling that view that this really matches transitional zoning and is not spot zoning, as has been brought up in some of the public comments. Additionally, we wanted to show a massing study to try to provide additional context on how these buildings are going to look in relation to the community. Again, off to the right there, you have larger buildings, larger footprints. Off to the west, you have lower masses from the estate zoning. So I think what this slide looks to demonstrate is the compatibility of our proposed townhomes with the other uses that are in close proximity to the subject parcel. As town staff pointed out, there's relevant service providers in the area, and they will have ability to provide adequate services and facilities. So in conclusion, increasing the supply of attainable and affordable workforce housing is essential to the long-term health of the Estes Valley. This parcel is an ideal location for housing and workforce housing in particular. It aligns with the comp plan and best practices of location and selection for workforce housing. You have walking distance to downtown, access to public transportation, access to amenities. Infill development will help protect wildlife corridors and areas on the outskirts of town. It's compatible zoning to the RM parcel to the south, and it acts as transitional density from heavy commercial and accommodations to the east towards estate zoning to the west. The last thing I'll add, and I didn't put this in the slide, but just based on conversations that have come up so far, it has been the applicant's understanding and expectation that the ballot initiative 300 does not apply to this application because it was submitted prior to the vote taking place. So we have not addressed that through this process and had not planned to try to obtain any signatures for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Yes.
To Attorney Kramer, two questions. Would you consider this spot zoning, as has been kind of brought up in some of the public comments? And then secondly, there was a question on one of the public comments about no signature on the application by the applicant, and that should be a reason for not approving this.
So Chair Cooper, on the first question about spot zoning, and this has come up over the past few years, what is spot zoning? And the short answer I have to that question is that spot zoning is zoning that is rezoning that is done for the purpose of allowing a development without regard for changes in the area or the comprehensive plan. So you'll see in the review criteria, changes in the area and the comprehensive plan are both part of the review criteria. So my answer to that over the years has been, if you think it meets the review criteria, then by definition, you think that it's not spot zoning, and that's exactly the kind of issue we're looking to you for a recommendation on. That's the kind of recommendation that helps the town board figure out what to do with an application. I have not looked into the subject of your second question. The issue is that there was not a signature on the application. I would have to turn to planning staff to discuss that, what might have happened and whether it's typical.
Yeah, regarding the unsigned application, there was one posted on the website. I believe that was an outdated earlier iteration of the application, and we do have a signed application, and that has been updated.
I believe there was a comment in the plan about having 15 parcels or 15 lots or 15 separate units, and there's a second reference in there to having 12 units. Just to clarify again, are we dealing with the concept plan of being 12 individual units?
Yeah, the concept depicts 12. Beyond that, the applicant could speak to if that's reflecting their plans accurately or not.
Another question, the Mountain Woods Townhomes, were they built in 2019?
That's correct.
And was that a rezone of that particular property? And was that E to RM?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know.
Before I was on this commission, I remember we were looking at Trailborn, and Trailborn in that same kind of corner, right across the street from that, had been approved to put like 90 more units or rooms, I guess they call them rooms. And I may be wrong on the number, but do you recall that, the Trailborn's approved proposal? So that would be, yeah, it would be where the R2 is, right, well, above the R2, right in that purple zone, correct.
Right, so they were approved with a development plan a few years back for a few cabins and a larger lodge building. I don't know the exact number. I would say 50-plus units in that lodge.
Yeah, I think it was around 90, and I wasn't on the commission at that time, but I was here at the meetings for that. It seems like that's going to be an issue considering, for traffic-wise, because it basically, their first proposal that they gave was kind of shot down because of the traffic problem. That right there, the hospital comes through there with the ambulances, and at that intersection there, and it would be 36th and Stanley Avenue, is that right? 36th and Stanley Avenue? And it already has an F as far as a grading for that area. So that's something that needs to be considered as far as putting in 12 more units with more houses and more cars and things.
Yeah, the applicant did submit a traffic memo reviewed by Public Works with no adverse findings. They, not sure if Public Works is here, if they could speak in more detail to that, but they did not find any expected adverse impacts to intersection.
Planner Hornbeck, you called it in your brief a neighborhood village in the comprehensive plan, and the developer said it's mixed residential. Which one in the comprehensive plan is that particular parcel?
So it is a mixed residential neighborhood.
So it's not neighborhood village.
Correct. That would have been an error to call it neighborhood village. That property to the north is neighborhood village.
One of the public comments indicated that the building that is on the site now is considered a historical building. Can you comment to that?
It's not, as far as, I mean, it's not a designated historic structure, no.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions, but I do think this is an ideal transition location for where it's transitioning appropriately, great place for workforce housing to go, and I applaud this location because it seems to be a nice transitional zone into the mixed-use corridor, so, and it's consistent with the comp plan, so thanks for putting it together.
I have a question for Housing Authority, if I could. Could you speak just briefly about the deed restriction, and is it workforce housing? Is it intended to sell these units to employees? Is it intended to rent the units to employees? Is there any kind of an offset to the rent available for the applicant who's looking to live there?
Scott Moulton, excuse me, Scott Moulton, I serve as the Executive Director of the Housing Authority. Is this on? Never seen that flash before. We are submitting this application, for the development of employee housing for the town. So the town seeks to use future potential housing at this site for housing of their staff.
So the town would rent it, the town would own the units, and then rent them out to the staff.
What the exact relationship between the town and their subsequent employees, we don't know, but it would be to house town employees.
We talked a lot about infill during the conversations with the comprehensive plan. It seems like an ideal application of that. I think the other thing, Commissioner Arterburn, is that being about less than a mile away from a lot of the town facilities would make it another ideal location for consideration.
Yeah, you talk about employee housing, but is there a specific deed restriction or some kind of control? I mean, who's gonna manage this property? Who's going to maintain it?
Not all of that has been determined at this time. It'd be too soon to discuss that in detail.
Chair Cooper, and I think in response to a question, I think it was Commissioner Arterburn who asked whether this was rezoned, whether the property to the south had been rezoned previously. I think I found the ordinance rezoning that, ordinance 3317, 260 Stanley Avenue, in 2017, December 12th, 2017, rezoning that property from E to RM.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I believe Planner Hornbeck said, was it an acre lot? Did you say this was 1 acre in total?
That's correct.
And I think the applicant, the staff report says 1.4 acres. Is that correct?
The lot is almost exactly 1 acre in size.
But the staff report says 1.4. So where's my disconnect there?
There must be an error somewhere, but it's a 1 acre. site.
Okay, 1 acre, and we're going to be making a decision off of 15 units, even though the conceptual plan says 12?
I think where the confusion on the 15 versus 12 happens is that as Planner Hornbeck mentioned, the application was initially submitted in January, and we subsequently had received comments from staff. And based on those comments, we made a revision to the plan, which you all obviously would not see because that's all the stuff that happens before it comes here. And so part of that revision was to reduce the number of units down from 15 to 12. So the proposal, the concept site plan that this would be tied to, you would tie this to the concept site plan as submitted would be 12 units.
Don't go. Parking. You heard, obviously, and I think it was your November 2024 meeting, that parking was a concern from the neighbors, and it appears like you have addressed that. On your diagram that you had listed out here, I counted about 10 parking slots. Are there parking available in front of each unit then, too?
No, there should be basically 24
there's 19
spaces.
there?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I guess
Because
that-
there are carport spaces in addition, so they're, basically every unit gets one covered space. That's just a carport
Got
open
it,
on the
okay.
sides, and then one.
So it sounds like you had some other concept ideas as far as height of the building that you took into consideration, the trees that were, I'm guessing, that wanted to be saved and that sort of thing.
Right, yeah, those two things, we had a plan that put garages in the units, which again involved, basically essentially making the units taller because we had to get the garage underneath. And so I guess I didn't mention that, but that was another reason why we went to this surface parking plan, was that so that we could reduce all the buildings down to 2 stories maximum, so that there wouldn't be taller structures. And then part of the drop of units from 15 to 12 was we were basically, more or less asked or directed to save those 2 large trees that are kind of simultaneously growing together there on the property. So that lost us a unit, and then in a reconfiguration of some other stuff, we dropped down to 12.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments before we go to public comment?
Yeah, one more just back on this issue. I think that the people in the community there are watching this development that's just south of it and seeing all the parking across the street and around. What if parking does become an issue? In other words, what if someone has 3 kids and they have 2 drivers and the mother and father? Is there any kind of a mitigation plan to address that? Because I actually live on Stanley Circle Drive, and then down below us, there's a house that has 6 cars at it all the time. And so that it's kind of an issue in that region, their area there.
Right. I don't know if Housing Authority, you've got anything in particular in mind. I mean, it's possible that you could work something into a lease or something. I think that's a detail that would have to get worked out down the road. And again, would be something that would be part of a discussion of a development plan, right? In that formal, that's sort of the weeds part of the second round of this, if we're to move forward, is that we would be talking about all those things again and really dialing those in because we'd be into that level of detail.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other commissioner comment before we open it up for public comment? Okay, open for public comment. Anybody would like to make a comment, please approach the dais, give us your name and address, and 3 minutes for comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Ralph. I live at 395 Parkview Lane. I provided written comments, and based on your comments and questions, it sounds like you had a chance to review those, and I appreciate that. My objections to the proposed or to the proposal are documented in those written comments. And I'd like to identify several reasons today in my verbal comments why you should not recommend this proposal. Number one, the application for rezoning does not meet the Development Code standard of Section 3.3.d. And I've listed several issues about that. Some of the information provided was erroneous. Other information doesn't really describe a change in condition. And number two is the application used misinformation and invalid arguments. Proposed density of the housing units uses workforce housing bases, but I think you heard again today that this is not workforce housing, this is town-owned housing. And the definition for workforce housing is in the Development Code, and it'd be inappropriate to give those bonuses to something that isn't defined as workforce housing. And fourth is the application change out on Friday with a different applicant and a different date for those signatures. And then this site plan is different than the site plan that was posted last week that afforded me to give public comments. And I think the message here is that the applicant wants this rezoning, but really hasn't committed to number of units or their configuration. And I understand that that comes at the subsequent phase with the development plan. But I think it's fair for all of us to understand what the intent is. And I don't think the intent has been adequately or accurately described. It's very tough to make a decision if you really don't understand what the request is all about. And lastly, the land use. When you look at this neighborhood coming off of Stanley Avenue onto Stanley Circle Drive, you see an entire neighborhood of single-family homes, and that neighborhood is separated from the three-story apartments along Stanley by that 90-foot buffer. So this is just something imposed on there with the back of the buildings facing the street, very inconsistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So You might invite the applicants and their representatives to respond to our comments today, but I ask that you keep in mind that they've made erroneous, illusory, false statements at the neighborhood meeting and in the application. And that their verbal statements today, such as corrections in the bases, changing the nature of what we're talking about here with the site sketch, changes in the intent, and just introducing new information today that's prone to the same deceptions previously used, not subject to any verification today by the Planning Commission or by the public. And so accepting this proposal because it sounds comparable to prior approvals would be equivalent to like allowing a big game poacher to continue poaching because he wasn't caught before or he wasn't identified before. And that would just allow that activity to continue. So it's time to properly make this decision, and I'm asking you not to recommend this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon, Christine Poppett, 650 Devon Drive. I submitted written comment, so I won't duplicate my time. I agree with Mr. Ralph, and I agree with Commissioner Mulhern on the issue of ballot 300. I'm sure no one's surprised about that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I oppose this development just because it's a future land use. That is not a zoning designation. And please do not send a recommendation to the town board for this without further investigatory work. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment?
Gina Stein, 290 Elm Road. In regards just to today's conversation and not understanding the full spectrum, I think it sets a poor precedent moving forward if a developer can present a potential site map and then you are approving it to go forward and then can come back and change. And I don't know if it was a Freudian slip, but the gentleman in the green sweater had spoken that it was 3 stories. So does that mean potentially they could come back and be 3 stories? Additionally, the essence of 300, I think, does need to be addressed. And I think the citizens put forth 300 because they were not being listened to before by 2/3 of the property owners in surrounding areas. Thus, it was put forward to a vote. So just because this was presented prior to that, I think when laws go into effect, they take immediate effect statewide and in Estes Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? Okay, hearing none. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're essentially pushing this to RM, right, with 8-unit density, but because of Chapter 11, there can be a 200% increase. Is it correct?
Yeah, the concept would rely on the density bonus in Chapter 11.
And they said it's for employee houses of Estes Park. That qualifies for whatever you want to say, workforce attainable under Chapter 11?
Yeah,
Commissioner Pawson, I think the simple way to answer that question is to be eligible for that density bonus, it would have to meet all those requirements. So if it did not meet all those requirements, it would not be eligible.
Okay.
So the comment that this is just because town housing is, does that make it workforce housing, or is the fact of rental restrictions that would come during the proposal stage where we would decide whether or not they need to have deed restrictions or rental restrictions appropriate with that, setting that condition? Is that accurate?
Commissioner Arterburn, essentially, yes, that always happens at a later stage than a rezoning stage. And I'm not aware of anything in the development code saying that because it's a town-owned parcel or because the housing authority is managing it, that it automatically gets a density bonus. It would have to meet whatever the code says it has to meet in order to be eligible for a density bonus.
Roger, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? I would entertain a motion.
Before we give a motion, can we add to, I think that it seems like, again, the staff has done a good job and the housing department's done a good job, and but there is the question of 300, and I was wondering that if we could add to the motions that you're adding, saying, have a clarifying statement into 300. Is that all right?
Yes, Commissioner Mulhern, I think the staff report put that together and laid that out. This is an unusual situation. What's required from the Planning Commission is a recommendation, but if you have a recommendation that's based in some part on 300 and in some part on the review criteria in the development code, then you all can package up a motion however you see fit with as much or as little detail about why you're recommending what you're recommending as you see fit, and staff will report that to the town board, and the town board can take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think our job here is to decide whether this rezoning is appropriate based on the comprehensive plan and what was submitted, and the town board will take up the issue of whether the ballot is appropriate. The ballot is for the application came before, because they're the decision-making body and they'll have to make that legal review. So if we want to make that recommendation, that's fine, but I think we should approve or disapprove based on, even if we approve it, we can recommend that the board consider ballot 300 before they approve it. I mean, it can go either way.
Well, I was going to suggest that we have a motion, like I moved forward the town board a recommendation of approval of the rezoning if it is determined that the application is or is not subject to the ballot question 300, including whether written approval from the application has to be obtained by 2/3 of the recorded owners of the properties within 500 feet of the application's boundaries. That's what I was going to suggest.
So I don't think you need to restate ballot 300 in there, which you basically did, but I think I could go with that.
Okay, well, that's the proposal I'd like to put in, if that's, should I say it again?
Is that a
Or
motion?
the motion I'd like to put in.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
I move to forward the town board a recommendation of approval of the rezoning application if it is determined that the application is or is not subject to ballot question 300, 2/3 of the recorded owners of properties within 500 feet of the application boundaries.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any other discussion?
I just have one comment. I don't think there was any discussion on like deed restrictions or something, making sure this is Estes Park property and staying in that way if this is changed. Because, you know, they're essentially getting a bonus, a density bonus, saying, hey, I'm going to have this for employees. What type of mechanisms in place to make sure it stays that way?
It's a good question.
That comes part of the development plan. They have to come back and bring that to us again. This is just the rezoning piece, not the development plan approval. So that comes in the next phase.
It is, I do want to say it is a good question, Commissioner Pawson. It's running through my head now as well. If we do get to that stage, we'll have to figure out how to structure that deed restriction or covenant so that it makes sense and fits what the development code requires. It can't be the situation that that town land is ineligible for that density bonus, or else the code would say that. So we would just need to figure out how to make that make sense.
your, your motion basically is saying we recommend an approval for changing this zoning to RM with the petition of the neighbors. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, basically what I'm saying is we're giving us an opportunity to test out a ballot that was codified in November 21st. So give us an opportunity to meet that condition until we decide, or determine whether or not it doesn't apply. Because in Colorado, it's mainly, if it's not stated in the ballot question, it usually falls by the wayside. So, and that's kind of what the Housing Authority decided, this doesn't apply in this case. But I'm saying we'd like to make sure that the citizens, 54% of the people that got that vote, are satisfied with the decisions we're making here.
So
Well,
Commissioner.
we're not making decisions, first of all. We're just making a recommendation, so.
Commissioner Mulhern, as I understand the motion, and maybe we should make sure we're all clear on this, it does forward a recommendation to the town board, and the recommendation that's forwarded to the town board is a recommendation of approval on the basis of the review criteria in the code if the town board determines that it's okay to approve for purposes of ballot question 300. So that puts it squarely in front of the town board to make a determination when it gets to the town board.
You clarified it. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other further comment? Okay, we're ready for a vote. Okay, the motion passes. All right, next agenda item is the recommendation on the establishment of zoning for 775 Riverside Drive. And it's good to see Commissioner, or Planner Washam back at the dais.
Thank you.
No, 5 minute, 4.5 minute break. Community Director Correcchia. Should we wait for Attorney Kramer to come back, or should we proceed?
Yeah, I was saying we need hold music.
Okay. Planner Washam, you're on the dais.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Kara Washam. I have one item for you today regarding the Riverside Drive Townhomes annexation, the establishment of zoning. The owner applicant is Estes Park Housing Authority. The purpose of this item is for Estes Park Planning Commission to make a recommendation to Town Board regarding the establishment of zoning for the Riverside Drive Townhomes annexation. This public hearing is specifically for establishment of zoning recommendation and is not a decision for the actual annexation. Planning Commission is the recommending body, and Town Board is the decision-making body. Here's a vicinity map of the proposed annexation. It is located toward the southwest side of town, just east of Manor RV Park, and adjacent to Tiny Town Cabins, Trout Haven, and Worldmark. Here's a map of the proposed annexation. The annexation process is governed by the Municipal Annexation Act, which is codified in Colorado Revised Statutes 31-12-101 and requires 3 main steps in the annexation process. This past fall, we completed steps 1 and 2, with Town Board voting to approve Resolution 9025, finding substantial compliance, and approving Resolution 9325, finding the subject property eligible for annexation. Step 3 is the public hearing that involves the ordinance for annexation and potentially the ordinance to establish zoning. We're looking at this possibly early 2026. To clarify substantial compliance and eligibility, determine whether the parcel can be annexed, and the final step determines whether parcel will be annexed. Town Board of Trustees has the authority to approve or deny an annexation request at its discretion, basing the decision on the specific facts and conditions of the proposal. The Town Board's role in reviewing and evaluating these requests is not restricted to a quasi-judicial function. Town Board is authorized to impose requirements and conditions that can exceed the town standard regulations. This is usually done as an annexation agreement between the town and the property owner. The Housing Authority requests annexation of a 2.621 acre property and establishment of RM multifamily residential zoning. The Housing Authority plans to develop 14 for sale townhomes that will be attainable and sold to the Estes Valley workforce. While separate development plan and subdivision plan applications will be required for the project to move forward, these applications are not under review with the annexation and establishment of zoning request. These details are provided as conceptual exhibits only. Here's a conceptual site plan showing the 14 proposed townhomes along Riverside Drive. Over the next few slides, we'll go over the existing conditions, land use patterns, zoning, and other considerations for the proposed development, keeping in mind that the proposal is just conceptual at this stage. If the project does move forward, Planning Commission will see this again in greater detail. So starting with hazards and site conditions, development has been heavily influenced by the site's slope and existing wetlands. The Housing Authority developed a design that incorporates townhomes primarily into the slope of Riverside Drive. This design maximizes the developable area with respect to the wetland setback, right-of-way, and building setbacks. The interior drive has been adjusted to preserve as many trees as possible. A site visit was conducted in June of 2023, and a wetland delineation report outlined 3 wetland locations. It is expected that the applicant will request a minor modification to allow some encroachment into the wetland setback. This request will be submitted and reviewed as part of the development plan, and the Planning Commission is the decision-making body for that. So moving on to land use. The surrounding area includes single-family residential properties to the east and south, mostly located in unincorporated Larimer County. The property to the north is Worldmark Estes Park, a resort within town limits. West of the subject property is Manor RV Park. This is located in unincorporated Larimer County. The future land use map in the Estes Forward Comp Plan designates this property as mixed-use centers and corridors. The current code does not have a zoning district that permits mixed commercial and residential uses. However, the proposed townhome development is consistent with the built form vision for mixed-use centers and corridors. Here's a zoning map for unincorporated Larimer County showing the subject property designated as A accommodations. Here's a future land use map from the Estes Forward Comp Plan showing the subject property designated as mixed-use centers and corridors. And then here's the Estes Park zoning map showing the property surrounded by CO to the north and E1 to the northeast. Estes Park Housing Authority's request for annexation includes a request for establishment of zoning to RM multifamily residential, which the Estes Park Development Code states is established to provide opportunities for multifamily residential development. The maximum density for RM is 8 units per acre, or up to 21 units for a lot this size. The applicant's proposal for up to 14 units is well below this number. This zoning designation permits multifamily housing development and utilizes the same density calculations as RM zoning. Apologies for that. Estes Park Housing Authority is also open to A accommodation zoning if the Estes Park Planning Commission recommends it. A crucial distinction is that A zoning could permit various other uses on the property, which may not align with the surrounding areas or the goals outlined in the comp plan. So shifting to this direction will warrant additional staff review and consideration. Here are some comments from Water, Power, Sewer, and Fire. Services are available near the subject property with no major concerns for the proposed development. A traffic memo was provided to Public Works for review. Traffic and intersection geometry analysis were found acceptable, and a traffic impact study is not required. To implement the Estes Valley Master Trails Plan, staff recommends a condition of approval that the applicant dedicated trail easement to access the Big Thompson River from Riverside Drive across the subject property. This requirement is also in the annexation agreement. The exact location and width of the trail will be determined in conjunction with a development plan review. Aside from meeting statutory requirements for annexation, there are no direct standards or guidance in the Estes Park Development Code or the comprehensive plan for either annexation or establishment of zoning. So town board review and evaluation of an annexation is discretionary, meaning the board may approve or deny as they see fit. The rezoning standards for review in section 3.3 provide some guidance to consider in establishing zoning. The amendment is necessary to address changes in conditions in the areas affected. Although the area surrounding the property has seen little change, annexation itself may be considered a change in conditions. In addition, the adoption of the Estes Forward Comp Plan, changing the land use designation to mixed-use centers and corridors may also be considered a change of conditions. The concept plan is compatible and consistent with the policy's intent of the future land use map. Town and other relevant service providers have reviewed the application and have indicated an ability to serve the conceptual development. Although the comp plan offers minimal direct guidance on annexation, its goals and policies are valuable for considering annexation and establishing zoning. The next 2 slides are a summary of relevant goals, starting with the built environment. In your staff report, you'll find a more detailed analysis, but in short, future development should strategically direct growth toward areas of existing infrastructure, coordinate and integrate land use and transportation objectives, and require that development preserve water quality, ecological systems, and natural features through sensitive site design and minimal disturbance. So moving on to housing, new development should ensure new housing meets the needs of the workforce and families, and it should create new housing opportunities. Estes Park Housing Authority proposes the development of 14 units called Riverside Drive Townhomes to be sold to the local workforce. This project helps address a significant shortage of affordable and attainable housing in Estes Valley. However, the property owner is not obligated to develop workforce housing upon annexation unless stipulated to do so in an annexation agreement. If not, they could provide market rate housing in accordance with RM multifamily residential zoning. Here are some advantages and disadvantages. Annexation would allow the town to control the development of the property. The town can require the owner meet higher development standards. And the proposed development would increase the inventory of housing stock for the Estes Valley. For disadvantages, the town would be responsible for providing services. However, all service providers have indicated an ability to serve the property. Staff asked the Planning Commission to provide a recommendation to the town board on whether the requested RM multifamily residential zone district is appropriate. If deemed appropriate, then staff recommends several conditions be included with the recommendation. The following 6 items are recommended conditions. Future development of the site shall be generally consistent with the conceptual site plan. The future development of the site shall require a deed restriction. Architectural design shall be compatible with the surrounding area. The owner shall dedicate a trail easement to access the Big Thompson River from Riverside Drive. Lighting shall follow dark sky best practices. And then the development plan application shall include an updated wetland report specifically addressing any potential impacts for proposed development that may encroach into the wetland setbacks. Encroachment into the setbacks, again, is a minor modification subject to approval by the Planning Commission. The general provisions outlined in section 3.15 of the code were followed. Public interest in this annexation is expected to be medium. At the time of this writing, one letter of public comment was received. The letter showed support for workforce housing. It stated concerns for effects on wildlife and potential for flooding. The letter also expressed concern regarding potential wetland setback encroachment. One last topic to acknowledge is ballot 300. The community voted yes on this issue. Whether ballot issue 300 applies to establishment of zoning is unclear, and staff is unable to provide further guidance. Planning Commission interpretation on the issue has value, although you do not need to make a determination, as town board is the decision maker on annexation and establishment of zoning. So here are some sample motions to consider. Let me know if you have any questions. We also have Peter Levine, Director of Real Estate Development with Housing Authority, and Executive Director Moulton is also here as well.
Thank you. Does the Estes Valley Housing Authority want to make comment or comment on the proposal?
Good afternoon again. Just one brief comment. I think number 2, as a sample condition, we might take issue with requiring both of those items, both an attainability and a workforce restriction. We would choose one or the other. One is an income restriction. One is a workforce without an income restriction, which provides a little more leeway to house based on the community needs. So I'd want to provide clarity around number 2. And of course, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
But those decisions on which one it would go is the next stage of this,
Correct.
has nothing to do with this, right?
Correct.
Okay, any commissioner comments, questions?
Talks about future modifications that could occur by right. And I was just wondering, does the proposed building site layout allow for future intensification or conversion, like additional units, enclosed parking, or accessory use? And if so, how will such change be limited to remaining consistent with what we were being shown today?
Commissioner Mulhern, so one of the recommendations or conditions of recommendation, go back to this real quick, would be that the development is in line with the conceptual plan that's submitted. So for
That covers it.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
And also, there was no, the size of this property and the number of units they're calling for, they're not getting any workforce housing bonuses as part of that, correct?
That's correct. They're not utilizing the density bonus. So with the size of the property, they could potentially develop, I believe, up to 21 units, but with the site conditions, the constraints with the wetlands and the slope, it would be infeasible to develop more than, I believe it's 12 units on this one. 14.
So that's where the limitation would come in on the size of the property and how, and those restrictions on the wetlands would severely restrict how much construction can be done on the site.
That's correct.
And when you mentioned some encroachment on the wetland, can you speak to that? What does that look like?
So right now, the conceptual plan, if I can tab over to that, can't quite see it on this one, but it is between 10 to 25%. If it's less than 10%, then staff is usually the decision-making body on that. Above 25%, it would go to Board of Adjustment. So it's kind of right in the middle. However, since the development plan would have to go to Planning Commission for a decision, it makes sense that you all have the option to review that minor modification with it. I know the site design may be tweaked just slightly. I know they're trying to avoid the setback encroachment as much as possible. To clarify, any encroachment wouldn't be in the setbacks themselves. It's within it's not the wetland itself, it would be within that setback. That's why staff would request an updated wetland report showing that if they are to encroach, are there going to be any negative impacts of that?
But even to build that drive, you're going to be pushing earth, right, into the wetland. Is that going to be in the wetland report that you're mentioning? That type of
I
thing?
believe so. Any development, which would also include, the grading and adding that road, would all need to be part of that wetland report to see if there's any negative effects on that.
Okay, I have one more question. You did,
If Pete could add a few
for sure.
comments to that.
Sorry, I just wanted to chime in with the wetlands because that has been honestly the biggest framework that has really dictated the design of this parcel. I think the wetlands in the lower and flat part of the site, and then we're essentially building into the slope. So as we go down the road to access the buildings themselves, based on the width of that road that the fire department's going to require, there's no way to really develop the site and staying 100% out of that 50-foot wetland setback. That being said, in no way are we planning with any of the excess dirt or anything to actually go into the wetlands themselves. So the wetlands are going to be designed to be left as is, and then any encroachment would just be on that 50-foot setback. And the framework of the design, quite frankly, has been to try to avoid that as much as possible. There's actually a little road that has the previous owner or utilities had put down there for right-of-way for utility access, because utilities are allowable within the wetland setback, and so there's sanitary sewer that is actually for the building that's the furthest to the right of the page, so furthest to the north, just below that, so just to that'd be the west, so plan north, if we're just looking at it, that drops off quite a bit before you get to that flat area. That's the wetland setback. And actually with that building there that we're showing a duplex, we are pulling the building envelope back further from the wetland setback because there's one current single family home there, and that structure is encroaching further into that 50-foot wetland setback than our proposed structure.
So those dashed gray lines are where that road utility piece is on this image?
So the dash lines that are in bold, those are boulder walls that we're planning to put in to try to avoid grading close down to the wetlands. The boulder walls is a strategy particularly tiered to avoid some of that gradual grading, so it'll create steeper drop off, but less grading that goes into that setback. And then from the right of there, it's that dash line is the easement that you can see that sanitary sewer has that goes all the way up to Riverside. Coincidentally, the road that I mentioned doesn't follow the easement. So there's a different way that I think utilities get down there to actually serve it.
Thank you. You did mention something about if this goes forward and it's not attainable, it could be sold at market rate? Did I hear that correctly?
So that's correct. Since the Housing Authority isn't utilizing any density bonus, that restriction would not just automatically be put on this. With an annexation, town board has the discretion to add more regulations above and beyond what the code would require. That's usually worked out in an annexation agreement. It's usually a discussion between the two parties to come up with a resolution there of how to make it work. It's my understanding that Housing Authority wants to develop this for workforce. I'm not sure about the attainable, exactly how that would play out. But without anything in the annexation agreement specifically limiting it to workforce and or attainable, it could be sold market rate or rented for market rate.
Okay, and over the years, we've been talking about attainable workforce, a bunch of different affordable. So if these are attainable townhomes and they're sold, what's the ballpark figure for a townhome on this property? Do we have that, or can you share that?
Honestly, we don't have the anticipated sales price of what it would be. The calculation really revolves around what your all-in payment is going to be based on HOA fees, insurance, monthly interest, mortgage payment. So much of this is really going to be dependent on what interest rates are going to be at that time. Also, timing of when we're going to develop this. From a housing authority standpoint, we're a mission-driven organization trying to create more attainable, affordable workforce housing throughout the valley. Our priority right now across all of our projects is going to be fish hatchery. Fish hatchery is going to need a lot of time, money, and effort to go to it. So this project, which we're taking through the annexation process right now, is going to take a bit of a backseat and really be dependent upon the fish hatchery capital stack, what type of financing grants that we're going to be able to compile there. Because there's, quite frankly, going to be a substantial amount of gap financing that's going to be required for that. Additionally, for this site and these townhomes, I'm almost positive it's going to cost us more to build and develop these than what the target sales price is. Therefore, that creates financial strain on the housing authority and the resources. So it needs to be in a position where we are able to take that hit to the bottom line and not put ourselves at a risk as an organization. So I think it's a non-answer to your question, but just kind of trying to lay out some of the factors that we're considering as a housing authority and timing for development.
I can appreciate that. So can you guess?
I cannot.
Okay.
Below market rate. I can guess. I can confidently say that.
That was a good non-answer. Any other questions from the commissioners before we open it up for public? Okay, any public comment? Anybody want to approach the dais? Okay. All right, we have any other comments or questions before we?
I moved forward to the town board of recommendation to approve the establishment of the requested RM multi-family residential zone district should the property be annexed, subject to the conditions of approval recommended by staff.
Would you mind adding to that the same stipulation we put on the first one, which is, and if it is determined that the application is or is not subject to ballot question 300, including whether written approval from applicant has to be obtained by 2/3 of the record owners of properties within 500 feet of the application's boundaries?
I would not, because this is an initial zoning, not a rezoning, so I don't believe it applies. So and the town board will take that up when they make the decision on annexation.
I was just trying to be consistent to the town board saying, both of these are rezoning, and, well, that's my opinion. It's maybe not be your opinion, so I understand.
They're not this is not a rezoning, correct? This is initial zoning.
That's correct. Establishment of zoning is a little bit different than a rezoning.
I would think that some of the people that voted for the ballot 300 would still look at this as rezoning. I'm just trying to accommodate the people that voted for this ballot initiative 300. That's all I'm trying to do.
I would second your motion. Any other questions or comments before we make a vote?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a comment, 2 comments really. Number one, I don't think we should be encroaching on wetlands. As you get closer to town, that asset becomes not quite the asset anymore for fishermen and, tourists. A lot of bugs come from that, and everything comes from the bugs. And the other thing is, from the standpoint of increase in stock, yeah, I get it with attainable and workforce and everything. But I took a peek at Zillow this morning. There's a lot of stock out there. Just searching Zillow, 147 units, a lot of price reductions. I think we all need to take that in consideration with when we talk about rezoning and adding stock to the market. That's why I asked what the price point would be, because there's a ton in all price categories, and prices are dropping. So just have some thought for the wildlife and everything that keeps things alive, and keep thought of the economies. That's all I got.
Any other comments before we make our vote?
Just to clarify that, there is a real good a documentary, I guess. It's Colorado Towns in Total Collapse. And it's the top 10 Colorado mountain towns in total free fall. And it's from the real estate. It's a really good commentary if you look it up. And it is something. They didn't mention Estes Park, but they are seeing some interesting things in Colorado mountain towns.
As the applicant, I have a clarifying question. I understood your motion to mean you're recommending approval to the town board for all 5 of the conditions under recommended conditions, 6. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because your one that you were concerned about with item 2 will be decided at the next phase of this effort. So it doesn't, go ahead.
Not exactly, right? You can, because of the annexation process, my understanding is you can apply different criterion to the approval, which is what's being done now. So that recommendation of approving all 6 of those does counteract, I do have concerns with item number 2.
So
And the
no,
reason I have-
we can't decide that. The town board will make the annexation agreement. We're just recommending approval subject to those conditions. The town will decide what conditions are actually put in place.
Understood. I was just asking for clarity that that was your intent of the motion. That's all I was asking for, so I understood.
Yeah, the intent is to put those conditions before the town board as recommended by staff. Whether the town board decides to put those in the annexation agreement is up to them.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments? Then we're ready for a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Planner Washam. Discussion items. We have 2 development code update. Community Director Correccia.
Mr. Chair, Commission members, I've got a few things for you for your interest, hopefully. Some development code related, but I know this has been a topic that a few of you have find this very important. January 13th, there'll be a study session before the town board on Estes Valley Habitat Assessment. It's not a staff-driven study session, from my understanding. It'll be from the Watershed Coalition, but that topic will be discussed. And that does have bearing on the development code update with some of the, habitat wildlife protections. So that is something that staff will be watching as well. Another couple of study session items on January 27th. There will be a study session on the development code update, public outreach to date. Public outreach conducted by the consultant design workshop, as well as our community conversations team. So at that time, those parties will present our findings, some results, some trends on public outreach to date. Knowing that public outreach will be occurring throughout this process, this is kind of a report card, what we found out to date.
Is that a joint study session?
No, sir.
So it's just for the town board?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so we're not participating in that, other than public comment, right?
Correct. The other one likely on the 27th will be the Wildfire Resiliency Code, the model code from the state. That's something that will also be put before the board at study session. So that's compilation of item number 1. Number 2, future meeting, your January 20th meeting. We do envision one case, and it's looking like it'll be a rezoning case. So that one will be coming before you. And that one, Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, that one did come in after the effective date.
That's correct. Staff doesn't have any guidance on when that cutoff is. So technically in the development code, our review process, step 1 is a pre-app. They apply for the pre-app before the submittal, or sorry, before the ballot measure.
Kara, I might actually pause this conversation
Okay.
because it sounds like we're getting into a matter that will be before you all for a quasi-judicial decision that's not on our agenda today. So that we should probably have that conversation if that comes forward for a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Just thank you. It's been the end of the year is coming. Thank you for your time. As you mentioned before, you're a volunteer board. You do this out of your own kindness and wanting to give back to Estes Park. You're not paid. So we definitely appreciate all the time and effort you take to give back to the town, to help out the staff. So thank you very much. If I don't see any of you before, happy holidays, happy New Year.
Back at you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And again, good job for all the planning staff for all their work.
And thanks for the pizzas.
Okay, I will call this meeting adjourned.